This story is about how one small mistake can lead to tragic consequences. The student went home and disappeared without a trace. The signal of her smartphone disappeared on the outskirts of the city. Only thanks to surveillance cameras were the police able to quickly solve this case and find out the shocking truth. In this video, we will tell you what happened to Samantha Josephson. Samantha Josephson was born in 1998 in the American city of Princeton, New Jersey. Soon she had a sister, and the family decided to move to Robbinsville, a small community near New York. After graduating from school, the girl entered the University of South Carolina in Columbia. Despite the fact that the educational institution was located more than 1,000 kilometers from home, she wanted to get the best education in the field of political science. She also went as an exchange student to Barcelona. While studying, Samantha met a guy named Greg, who was a year older than her. They started dating and continued to maintain a close relationship even after he graduated from university and went home. After college, Samantha planned to continue her studies and attend law school at Drexel University in Philadelphia. She even received a scholarship that would fully cover the cost of her studies. On March 29, 2019, she received sad news from home and was in a depressed mood. Samantha asked Greg to come to her, but he had urgent matters. Besides, he was supposed to arrive in just a few days. Greg suggested she unwind and go somewhere with friends. It was Friday, and many students were planning to go to the central area of the city, where the most popular bars were located. During her studies, Samantha made many friends, so she easily found company. Around midnight, she went to a bar called Bird Dock. The company was having fun, but Samantha was still in a depressed mood. She spent most of her time texting with Greg, and at about 2 o'clock in the morning she texted him that she was going home. She called Uber and got on the phone with Greg to pass the time while waiting for the driver. When the car arrived, she said goodbye to the guy and hung up. A few minutes later, Greg noticed something strange. He and Samantha installed an application that allowed them to track the location of each other's smartphone. After some time, the guy went there to check if she had arrived home and saw that her phone was moving in the opposite direction from her apartment. Greg wrote her several messages, but all of them remained unread. He started calling her, but there was no answer either. Meanwhile, her smartphone moved further and further from the house, and about 30 minutes later the signal disappeared. Greg decided to call her friends, and none of them contacted Samantha either. Then he thought that the girl could still come home, but accidentally left the phone in the car. Deciding that she would get in touch in the morning, he went to bed. However, by morning there was still no word from Samantha. The girl was supposed to go on a shift at a local cafe, where she worked part-time in her free time from school. Greg called there and found out that Samantha didn't show up for work. At this moment, her boyfriend and friends began to seriously worry that something terrible could happen to the girl. At approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they filed a missing person report with a local police department. In addition, they called all local hospitals, but Samantha was not there either. The friends also walked around the main street where the bar was located, looking for any clues. However, nothing was found. Greg, who had already arrived in town by that time, went to that same bar. He had friends there who allowed him to look at surveillance camera footage. Rather, he managed to notice Samantha on them. At 2:06 o'clock, Samantha was caught on surveillance cameras near the bar. She was on the phone with Greg while waiting for the Uber driver. When he arrived, the girl hung up and got into the car. Greg took the footage and headed to the police station to show it to the detective. However, shocking news awaited him there. The guy was taken to the room where Samantha's parents were already sitting. One look at them was enough to understand that something truly terrible had happened. The police told him that Samantha's body had been found several hours earlier, hundreds of kilometers from the bar, near the small settlement of New Zion. A local hunter found her in a field. For Greg, this news came as a real shock. He realized that night, using a tracking app, He could have watched his girlfriend being kidnapped from a busy street. Later, forensic experts determined that the girl suffered about 120 stab wounds. Some of them indicated that Samantha tried to shield herself from the attacker with her hands. The police were faced with the question, who could have done this? Thanks to recordings from cameras near the bar, they identified the model of the car the girl got into. Additionally, Samantha's friend opened her laptop, checked her email, and learned that the Uber driver Samantha had called that night had canceled the order and did not show up at the designated location. Then it became clear that Samantha drove into a completely foreign car, mistaking it for her Uber. The recording shows her getting into the back passenger seat almost immediately when the car pulled up. The driver didn't even have time to park. The main task of the police was to find this car. They admitted that the driver might not have been involved in the murder, but he must have had useful information. At the very least, he could have told the police where he dropped the girl off. Detectives looked at the rest of the records and saw that the same car came near the bar several times, and only after that the driver drove up to the very place where Samantha was standing. Police sent out a tip for a late-model black Chevrolet Impala. Considering that this was the only lead, all patrols made great efforts to find this car. Fortunately, we didn't have to wait long. 26 hours after Samantha's murder, at 3:30 am, police spotted a suitable vehicle driving directly in front of them. It was just a few meters from that same bar. For the first few minutes, the officers simply followed the Impala. Then they signaled the driver to stop on the side of the road. He stopped, and the officers asked him several questions. Then the policeman asked the driver to get out of the car, which he did. However, as soon as the officer announced the reason for the stop, the driver immediately took off running. The fugitive tried to escape, but he failed. One of the officers immediately raised the alarm on the radio, and patrols arrived at the scene and captured the man. Once the police discovered his identity, it became clear to them why he was not eager to communicate with law enforcement agencies. He turned out to be 24-year-old Nathaniel Rolland, who had an impressive criminal history for his age. He had several fines for driving without a seat belt, as well as a conviction for drinking alcohol while driving. But all these are small things in comparison with his further crimes. In October 2018, he was involved in a case of kidnapping a woman. Then two men ran up to the victim's car at a traffic light, got in, and forced her to drive to the nearest ATM. There they demanded to withdraw all the money from the bank card, after which they forced the woman to drive to her house. The criminals took various valuables from the home and fled. A few hours later, Nathaniel sold some of the stolen items to a local pawn shop. He was arrested and charged with theft under $2,000. However, the investigation failed to charge him with car theft and abduction of a woman. Detectives also found out one important fact. Nathaniel grew up in an area near New Christian, the same place where Samantha's body was found. After examining Nathaniel's car, which he abandoned while trying to escape from the police, investigators found much more serious evidence. A large amount of blood was found in the trunk and on the passenger seats, and Samantha's phone was waiting for them in the glove compartment. In addition, there were a lot of cleaning products in the car, which were used to try to wash away traces of blood. All this was already enough to charge Nathaniel with murder. And during a search of his girlfriend's house, where he lived, detectives were able to find even more clues. There was a knife with traces of blood there, as well as several more packages of cleaning products. Traces of blood were even found under Nathaniel's fingernails, as well as on his sock and bandana. Experts quickly determined that all this blood belonged to Samantha. This set of evidence was enough to accuse Nathaniel of kidnapping and murder. A trial began on July 20, 2021. The prosecution called more than 30 witnesses and added important details to this case. Footage from street cameras showed Nathaniel driving back and forth for almost half an hour near the street where he later picked up Samantha. This could indicate that he was purposefully looking for a victim. When he passed by the bar where Samantha was standing at that time, nothing interesting happened. Another car pulled into the parking lot, and a girl walked toward the passenger door. Apparently she thought it was Uber. However, the car continued moving, and Samantha stepped back. Just a few seconds later, Nathaniel, who saw everything that was happening, drove up to Samantha. This suggests that he could act with cold calculation. The girl in front of him almost got into someone else's car, and can get into his. Apparently, this was exactly his plan. As soon as Samantha got into the car, the driver activated the child locks. Because of this, the door could only be opened from the outside. One can only guess how events unfolded next. Nathaniel could have attacked the girl right away, and no one on the street would have heard her screams. He could also have driven away from the club, and only then attacked her. We don't know this because Nathaniel himself refused to admit guilt. A few hours after the murder, Nathaniel was caught on camera at 2 ATMs. There he tried to cash out Samantha's bank cards, but all his attempts failed. On July 27, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Nathaniel was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The judge noted that with such a set of evidence he had no chance of escaping punishment. Samantha's parents, who attended every meeting, were devastated. Despite the fact that the criminal was punished, their daughter will not be returned. But they found the strength to do something useful for society in memory of Samantha. Her family founded an organization that deals with the security of services such as Uber. Thanks to close work with lawyers and politicians, Samantha's parents achieved the passage of several important laws in South Carolina and later throughout America. According to the new requirements, drivers of such services were obliged to place license plates on the front of their cars to make it easier for clients to identify them. In addition, there are penalties for those who pretend to be a licensed driver of such companies. They face a large fine and a prison term of up to 30 days. Another law requires companies to issue special driver information stickers that must be placed on car windows. They must contain his photo, name, and car number. In addition, each driver must have stickers with a special code that the passenger can scan with their smartphone. Later, a law was passed obliging all drivers to have luminous identification marks indicating their involvement in a certain company. Finally, Samantha's parents achieved the passage of laws at the federal level in Congress. It requires all drivers working for such companies to have numbers on the front and an illuminated sticker on a windshield, as well as codes to scan on the side windows. Thus, the girl's family achieved the adoption of serious legislative initiatives so that the tragic story of their daughter would not be repeated with anyone else. As for Greg, he changed his field of practice and became a criminal lawyer representing crime victims in court.